And let's talk about the WWE Draft. The draft commences on SmackDown this Friday. It continues into Raw next Monday. They have Lee Fitting leading production for them, and with his background at ESPN, what I'd like to see them do is make the draft more, I guess, draft-like would be the best way I could describe it. I think we need more trades with the GMs, even the night of. I mean, I'd like to see trades throughout the year, here and there, but you could even do them the night of. You could have cutaways to the panel that we usually get on the kickoff shows at a desk in the back of the arena, evaluating the picks as the show goes on. I'm expecting more of a sports-like presentation for it. And I don't mean the war room that we had that first year. I think they went to Fox. Remember the war room, and who was it? Natalia or somebody got drafted, and everybody in the room was like jumping up and down. You know, like the U.S. had just attacked its like mortal enemy. We have struck North Korea, and everybody in the fucking war room is jumping up and down. I mean, give me a break. So I think there are ways to try to do it without going too over the top. So I'd like to see that. But as far as the moves, and I just jotted down a bunch of things here, kind of stream of consciousness. First of all, this should be obvious. You know, Roman Reigns should be a free agent, like Brock Lesnar was, assuming he's going to be off television for a while. Same with Seth Rollins. If they're going to miss, months of time, there's no reason to draft them anywhere right now, so just keep them on the free agent list. The question is, who gets the first pick in the draft? Because whoever gets that first pick, why would they not want Cody Rhodes on their show? This entire WrestleMania was built around this guy. This guy is now the undisputed champion. SmackDown got the first pick in last year's draft because the draft started on SmackDown. Guess what? The draft starts on SmackDown again this year. So assuming SmackDown is getting that first pick, I think Cody Rhodes is staying there. He's going to be on the blue brand going forward. That's what I would do. And that way, Damian Priest keeps the World Heavyweight title on Raw. And Adam Pearce can draft the entire Judgment Day with his first pick, including the champion. Last year, factions were drafted together. So I'm just assuming it's going to work the same way this year. We don't know that because they haven't said. It's not like they've laid out the rules of the draft. Maybe they'll do that on Raw tomorrow night, but they have not told us anything as far as how the rules are going to work. The only thing we know is that NXT will also be involved. But if they swap the champions, then the other Raw champions have to be swapped too, because otherwise, what's the point of having all the belts, all the new belts looking the same if they're not going to be on the same show? You look at the Raw belts, right? The World Heavyweight title, the Women's World Heavyweight title, and the new Raw Tag Team titles. There's a uniformity to all of them. They all look the same. Makes no sense to put the Women's World title on SmackDown and move the other one to Raw. It would be stupid. Unless you draft all the champions together. Now, there is an argument to be made for swapping the champions. And with Damian Priest on SmackDown, also then drafting Jey Uso back to SmackDown. That way the match at Backlash would still make sense because you'd have two SmackDown guys. But now, as this new Bloodline story unfolds, you've got Jey back on the blue brand if you do that. Especially if they were to cost him the World Heavyweight title at Backlash. I wouldn't do it, though. I don't think he needs to be on SmackDown right now. And when the time comes, if they need him on SmackDown for the Bloodline story to progress, and to do an Usos reunion or to have a Roman Reigns and Usos reunion, that's where the concept of trades comes in. See, I like the idea of the GMs utilizing brand trades more often throughout the year, instead of people just randomly showing up on whatever show they want, whenever they want. So Jey Uso can stay right where he is, and when the story calls for it, if you want him on SmackDown, there are ways to get him on SmackDown. So I would keep the Judgment Day together on Raw. That includes Rhea Ripley. When she returns, she can go after Liv Morgan. I think the WrestleMania match next year should be Rhea Ripley against Bianca Belair for the Women's World title. Bianca has her team with Jade Cargill right now. They're probably going to win the tag team titles soon on SmackDown. I would keep her right where she is. She could win the Women's Royal Rumble next year, and she could choose to face Rhea, who will be champion again before then, and that's how you do that match. So the key champions should stay right where they are. I think the top champions anyway should have draft protection. I would consider swapping Sami Zayn and Logan Paul and moving the US and the Intercontinental titles. But I really think Sheamus needs to be on whatever show the Intercontinental title is going to be on. And they just brought him back to Raw. People like him and Braun Breaker and Jade Cargill who were, signed by the GMs of one show or the other. Like, it would be dumb for them to not have draft protection and stay where they are. Why would they make such a big deal about Nick Aldis signing Braun Breaker into a contract signing a few weeks ago and then he gets drafted to Raw? So they should stay where they are. Sheamus should stay where he is. And I would probably keep those titles right where they are. I've gone back and forth on this. Ultimately, though, I think I would keep all the main roster champions exactly where they are. LA Knight can stay on SmackDown and feud with Logan Paul. Chad Gable and the Creeds, get them together as a heel trio. Let Gable win the Intercontinental title from Sami Zayn. I would also keep Randy Orton on SmackDown, and I would have him as Cody's next challenger for the WWE title after the program with AJ Styles runs its course. Because I'm guessing that they're going to get more than one match out of that. And then at that point, Randy could be up next. Because there's a ton of history there between Cody and Randy. I mean, you could have them feuding for months. I would draft Charlotte Flair from SmackDown to the Raw Women's Division. They could use her more than SmackDown can. I don't think Charlotte and Tiffany Stratton need to be on the same brand right now. I would also move Naomi to Raw. I think that's where Jimmy Uso ends up anyway. And how about this? I would consider drafting Becky Lynch from Raw to SmackDown. And Seth Rollins could land there too when he's ready to come back. She's already think about the women that Becky has already worked with just in the last several months. I'm not talking all time because Becky has worked with almost everybody anyway. But just in the last few months, she's worked with Rhea, she's worked with Nia, she's worked with Liv, and this is all recent. And we know her history with Charlotte. I don't think we need them on the same brand. I think she would benefit from a change in scenery. And I don't know when she's going to be back on TV. She may pop up in the Battle Royal on Raw tomorrow night, wrestling for the World Heavyweight title. Her contract is also up in the next few weeks. But I would seriously consider moving her to SmackDown. I think Alexa Bliss could be back on TV very soon as this week. And I would have her on Raw. Carmella is another name who recently gave birth and has been out for many months. I know she was still having health issues, something with her foot, some kind of nerve issue with her foot. That was months ago. I mean, I don't follow along with her stories or anything. I don't know if there's been any update on that since then or how she's doing. But with Corey Graves as the lead announcer on SmackDown, I think SmackDown would be the more likely landing spot for her. So I say Bliss to Raw and Carmella as a surprise in the draft to SmackDown. And so that adds some more names that have been out for a while to each women's division. Gunther. I would keep Gunther where he is. I would keep Gunther and Imperium on Raw, have him go after the World Heavyweight Championship this summer. Braun Strowman has been out for about a year now, almost a year, after spinal fusion surgery. I don't think he's been medically cleared yet, but he's getting close. I would draft him over to SmackDown. I think he could be a good heel challenger at some point this year for Cody to overcome. Then we have NXT. The NXT champion right now is Ilya Dragunov. He had a match on Raw with Nakamura a few weeks ago. So did Roxanne Perez, the NXT women's champion. I think Dragunov is going to be drafted to Raw. I want him on the same brand with Gunther. That's what I would do. I would draft him over to Raw. Roxanne Perez, I would keep her in NXT. I think it would be a mistake to draft both champions at the same time. I mean, you already have the NXT champion you're going to call up. Roxanne just won back the NXT women's title. I don't think you need to call her up and Ilya in the same draft. So I would keep her where she is. But I think Carmelo Hayes is definitely coming up, and I would put him on SmackDown. I would have Carmelo Hayes on SmackDown as a heel. And I look at that women's division in NXT, and I could see somebody like Lyra Valkyria being called up. I like Fallon Henley. I like Fallon Henley. I would send her from NXT to Raw. Put her in that Raw women's division. I have not been following NXT as much over the past couple of months. I really need to get caught up on everything, but I always liked her. I think she may be going heel. I think they're doing an angle right now where she may be going heel soon. But I think the Raw division needs at least one fresh name, and she would be my pick for that spot from NXT. And then lastly, if I look at the main roster right now, there's a few different names that I think you could always send to NXT for a while. I would send Shinsuke Nakamura back to NXT. When Nakamura first debuted, it was in NXT. He was a massive deal. Not so much now. I mean, we're talking, oh my God. I mean, when he debuted at that Dallas NXT TakeOver show, it was 2016. And here we are now 8 years later. He has been beaten and beaten and beaten by everybody on that Raw roster. And if he goes to SmackDown, it'll be the exact same thing. I think he would benefit from taking a little respite from the main roster, as Baron Corbin has benefited. And I would send Nakamura to NXT for a while. Doesn't have to be a year or anything like that, but I think him spending at least a few months down there, I think could be good for the people he works with in NXT, but it could also help rejuvenate him a little bit. You know, if he stays on Raw, if he stays on SmackDown, he's jobber bait. That's all he's going to be. You know, in NXT, I guarantee you this, in NXT, they would have him, Shawn Michaels would have him doing more than he would be doing on either one of these two shows. And then when you need him eventually, you can bring him back up. But those are my draft thoughts. Let me know yours. And then we could talk about them this week. I'll be live after SmackDown on YouTube Friday night to go after all the Night 1 picks, because we got Night 1 coming up on Friday.